So Ratnakar, thank you very much for talking to me. You're the Executive Director of the World Trade Organization's Enhanced Integration Integrated Framework. And I thought we'd start. We're going to go on and talk about the fourth industrial revolution and least developed countries. But I thought I'd start by asking you to tell me and the students about what the EIF does.
So fair enough, and thank you for that question. It's a good conversation starter. So Enhanced Integrated Framework is a partnership between least developed countries. There are actually 46 least developed countries in the world, and then we also provide support to 5 recently graduated countries, altogether 51 countries, right? So we've got those 51 countries who are our partners whom we provide support to. And we've got 24 donors who contribute resources into our trust fund. And then we've got 8 international agencies, including the WTO, where we are housed. And then we have World Bank, IMF, International Trade Center, UNCTAD, UNDP, UNIDO, and UN Tourism Organization. So these are the partners, right? So they have come together to support least developed countries to build their trade capacity and to benefit from the advantage that is being offered by the opening of the global economy. For example, LDCs do not face significant market access barrier as of now because of the preferential market access provided by a host of WTO members. But at the same time, the fact of the matter remains that they are unable to utilize the market access opportunity because of supply side constraint. When I say supply side constraint, what they have is a limited production base. So, I mean, they need goods for their local consumption, and then they would normally sell the surplus in the international market. But then they also aren't able to meet the quality threshold that is required by the international market and be competitive enough to outmaneuver other players, such as the big players such as China, Vietnam, India, and what have you. So therefore, the objective of our program is to build their trade capacity by addressing their supply side problems. So there are 3 ways through which we support LDCs. First, when we receive a request from the country, we conduct an analytical study called Diagnostic Trade Integration Study. The objective of Diagnostic Trade Integration Study is to identify what are the opportunities that lie ahead for the country, but what are the binding constraints as well, right? So, and the base of that also actually that contains what is known as action metrics of priority action that need to be undertaken by countries to take advantage of the opportunities, right? So once that is done, then we provide institutional support to the countries. Right? And these institutional support take 2 forms. One is the National Steering Committee that is created at a higher level, a kind of a policy-making body, priority-setting body that has representatives of senior government officials from the Ministry of Commerce, as well as other ministry, line ministries, as well as finance, planning, and other ministry. But it has representatives from the private sector, as well as donors and civil society. So that's the policy setting body. But then what you also have is that, what is the use of policy and priority setting if there's nobody to implement it? So therefore, we also provide support for creation of what is known as National Implementation Unit. And these units are housed within the government, Ministry of Commerce, right? And they are responsible for implementing those priority actions identified through the DTIS, Diagnostic Trade Integration Study process. Then some of these priority actions can be implemented with a stroke of a pen. For example, reducing the number of documents required at the border, at the custom point, in order to facilitate trade. E.g., for example, number of documents are 12, they need to be reduced to 8. They can happen with a stroke of a pen. If the minister is convinced, he or she can sort of sign a kind of a policy which would allow that to happen. But at the same time, there are certain priority actions that need additional resources. Because when it comes to, the example of trade facilitation that I've given, the reducing the number of documents, easy, right? But at the same time, what about installing an X-ray machine at the custom point in order to, randomly check some of these shipments, right? Some of the goods. That would cost money. What about setting up, let's say, a laboratory in order to test the quality of products that can be certified by the lab, and then that can be exported globally, right? So that would also need resources. Or, for example, in Vanuatu, we provided support for the reconstruction of the seafront that was destroyed by Cyclone Palm back in 2015, for which we provided money, and they were able to mobilize additional resources also. So these are the kind of support that requires, or a mango processing plant that we helped set up in Mali or Burkina Faso or Senegal. So these require resources, and that's where we come in with resources, with the expectation that the countries are able to mobilize additional resources. We call ourselves a catalytic initiative simply because we provide initial seed money to the country, and countries are expected to mobilize additional resources. The example of Vanuatu I gave you is a very good example. I keep citing this because when the project was developed back in 2015, we provided them with the support of $3.1 million, $15 million, and they were able to mobilize additional $15.8 million from the government of New Zealand, and now they have completed the reconstruction work, and it's pretty solid actually. It cannot be destroyed by the kind of Cyclone Palm that hit the country back in 2015. So it requires for it to be completely destroyed, it would have to be a natural disaster of a higher scale. Anyway, the point is that has helped the country to attract more tourists via cruise ships, right? And then we've also created within that kind of the handicraft village, where a cottage where the local sellers can sell their handicraft or other traditional product. So that has actually created livelihood opportunity for the sellers, for the producer, for artisanals. So this is a very good example of how we support productive capacity building. I mean, we've also supported productive capacity building in Gambia by constructing the cargo complex at the Banjul International Airport with a view to supporting them to airlift some of the horticultural exports that they wanted to export, right? So that's a massive facility to which we've contributed, with the result of which now the shipment of horticulture products have increased significantly from the airport, where the trade facilitation, all the setup has been provided. So this is the kind of modality we follow in terms of supporting these countries, and the whole idea is that we give country ownership to the country, because countries decide their priority. Unlike many other programs or support measures where the project idea is conceived at the capital of the donor or development partner or at the headquarters, then it is transmitted or parachuted to a least developed country with the expectation that they would implement the project. They normally would implement the project, but what is the guarantee of their sustainability if there's no ownership of the country? So that's the kind of model we follow. So full suite of support, because there are institutions providing piecemeal support. You provide analytical support. One agency provides analytical support. Another agency provides a support on productive capacity building. The third one provides support on institutional. But then when it comes to the question of providing support on the institutional bit, we are one of the pioneers in this area, and we provide support for a period of first 3 years with the expectation that they would achieve necessary result, and then we provide additional support for 2 years. After 2 years, what we do is to provide what is known as sustainability support for a period of 2 years. So altogether, 7 years support would be provided. First year to fifth year, we provide support up to $300,000 per country for this kind of institutional strengthening. But at the same time, what we do when we reach the sixth year, the sustainability phase, we give them half the money, $150,000, with the expectation that the money would be spent on programmatic expenses, not on paying salary or meeting the overhead cost of the structure. The expectation is that then government takes on the responsibility of managing the National Implementation Unit as well as National Steering Committee themselves without any support from the EIF. If they are able to mobilize support from the government treasury, well and good. Otherwise, they need to mobilize additional resources from other donors or from the private sector. So that's the kind of modality that we follow in order to provide targeted support to Aid for Trade support to LDCs.
That's a very full answer, probably to my first two questions, because I was going to ask you to go on and talk about the way that the EIF does the work that it does. But just to summarize that for people watching, what you've said is that the EIF assembles resources from developed countries that it can then use in helping least developed countries take advantage of trade, and particularly as trade has opened up and globalization has expanded over the last several years. Your work has been to enable them to take advantage of that. And you do that through investing in a range of areas that improve their trade and their economic capability to do that. And your example of Vanuatu and the Gambia really explains in detail what that means on the ground and how that happens. Very valuable. And clearly, you've got a great job of being the executive director who gets to coordinate all of this and to do these wonderful things with least developed countries. What I want to move on next to is the impact of the fourth industrial revolution, because we're especially concerned with the impact that technology is having on the economies of least developed countries. And I'm interested particularly on how this is impacting what you're investing in, what the role that technology is, what it will play there, and how you might balance your investment and support for development based around technology, and how you balance that with other areas that you've worked in the past. How do you decide what the priority is there, really?
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind words, as well as for that question relating to fourth industrial revolution and technology in general. What we've noticed is that there's a substantial advancement in the technology frontiers that is actually taking shape from let's say the second decade of 2000s, right? But at the same time, we also realize that there are challenges that the LDCs face, but there are opportunities as well. So why not we provide necessary support to LDCs to take advantage of opportunities, right? So that's the kind of approach that we followed. And as the part of the design of the program, what we've done is in 2018, when we were preparing the second strategic plan for the second phase of the program, from starting 2019 all the way up to 2022, we included technology as one of the components where we should be working on. providing support to countries to leapfrog, providing support to countries to enable them to use technology so that they can take advantage of the trade opportunities, as well as enhance their competitiveness in the global market, enhance their productive capability, right? So that's how we are moving. And the fourth industrial revolution is one of them. But at the same time, some technologies are benign technology, very, very small technology that has helped countries to leapfrog, right? So I'll explain all of that. And the landscape of technology that has been changing, even in LDC, and globally, of course, and some LDCs have started taking advantage of the opportunities without the EIF support. I mean, I'll just give you a few examples of, what are the kinds of technologies being used by LDCs to enhance their productivity as well as competitiveness in the global market. For example, in Ethiopia, blockchain technology is being used by coffee producing companies, basically, in their partnership with the Swiss-based foundation called Cardano Foundation, to enhance trade in Ethiopia's biggest export item, coffee beans, by streamlining traceability and supply chain through blockchain technology to record, track, and trace coffee beans from local farmers. This initiative is expected to provide consumers confidence about the source and purity of coffee beans. And this model is being followed by some of these, fair trade networks, right? And it is actually hoped that local farmers can receive an increased return on their labor, as the consumers will be ready to pay premium price for final product, and local producer would also benefit from that. So that's one example. Another example is the use of drones. In Rwanda, the government has partnered with Zipline, a California-based startup, United Parcel Services, UPS, and Global Vaccine Alliance, Gavi, to deliver blood to hospitals in remote parts of the country. Remote clinics can now place orders for life-saving blood via text messages, which are fulfilled by drone dispatched from different centers dotted around the country. And Zipline has also entered the second LDC in the region, and this is Tanzania, and has received $40 million funding from venture capital firms to continue the same business at a scale. Similarly, 3D printing is another fourth industrial revolution technology that is being effectively used by a company called Planeter, a Chittagong-based company in Bangladesh. It is manufacturing commercial robots, including 3D concrete printing robots, and exporting them to South Korea. Finally, artificial intelligence. And this is an area which is massively growing in Nepal. Cloud Factory, a company with presence in Kenya, Nepal, the UK, and USA, has been providing data labeling, quality control, and processing support for artificial intelligence services to clients based in developed countries. And recently, the company has moved to accelerated annotation that blends the best of AI-powered automation and human expertise to deliver accurate labels for image data sets 5 times faster. Similarly, a company called iCog Labs, based in Ethiopia again, has been providing support to various AI-based projects, including machine learning-based data analysis, mobile robots, and cognitive robotics to its customers, largely based in developed countries. However, what we feel is that the LDCs cannot benefit fully from fourth industrial revolution technologies unless and until there's a concerted efforts to enhance 3 things. One is accessibility. Second one is affordability. And the third one is application of these technologies, as they are so far severely restricted in LDCs. Let me explain what I mean by that. So accessibility in LDC is restricted because of 2 primary reasons. First and foremost, there is intellectual property protection on IPR technologies, which are concentrated, heavily concentrated in 5 jurisdictions: European Union, the USA, Japan, Korea, and China. Almost 90% of the 4IR technologies are being patented by these firms based in these countries. And I mean, patent protection effectively means that you get protection for 20 years and you license it on under your terms and conditions, right? But at the same time, there are open source technologies that are being utilized by LDCs, but open source technologies have some limitation, and some of these technologies come with a kind of a higher price tag when you need a professionally run a capable, service that would deliver better output, right? So that's the first reason why I say accessibility is limited. The second reason is that there's a lack of infrastructure in these countries. Electricity, for example, is or fiber optic cables. These are backbone infrastructure that are required for a functional fourth industrial revolution technology application, right? But then most of the LDCs do not have these capabilities. For example, LDCs such as Burundi, Central African Republic, and South Sudan, only less than 10% of the population has access to electricity. So, I mean, then the electricity access is one thing, but the quality of electricity is another, because a frequent interruption that takes place in between the supply of electricity can also interrupt the operation of a fourth industrial revolution technology. So that's the first bit, and that needs to be handled. Second one is the affordability. That's also limited in LDCs because of high cost of devices. The devices such as computer, tablets, and a smartphone that you require in order to run these technologies, they are quite pricey in LDCs. For example, I was looking at the example of the day in Bangladesh. The total cost of, let's say, acquiring a computer, a laptop, HP laptop, which is the best-selling laptop in Bangladesh, is 52,500 taka, which is roughly equivalent to $495 US, and that would be equivalent to 2.3 month salary of an average Bangladeshi. Would they be able to afford to do that? They have other needs and priorities. The needs and priorities of educating their children, the needs and priority of feeding their children, and all of that. Even at the individual level, even at the firm level, that is a significant barrier, right? And this is because of taxes. For example, in Bangladesh, the government recently introduced a tax of 15% VAT, value-added tax, at the importing point on these devices, as a result of which price has increased. So there is a substantial possibility for these prices to be reduced, because if you are manufacturing, if you have a domestic capability to manufacture or assemble, then tax is probably justified, and never fully justified, but then probably justified from a policy perspective in order to protect your domestic industry. But if you are not doing it, then it only serves the revenue purpose. At the end of the day, who gets hit is the ultimate consumer or end user, right? So that's the thing. The second one is there's high charge for internet services. For example, according to Alliance for Affordable Internet, users in LDCs such as Central African Republic and Democratic Republic of Congo must spend more than 50% of their GNI per capita to obtain 1 gigabyte internet data. So, I mean, with this kind of a prohibitive price of services, who would be inclined to use these technologies? Then the third bit is the application, and that's also limited. Application is limited predominantly because of lack of education and skill. Most LDCs have limited human resources trained in what is known as STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And this is probably not because of the low IQ level. I would not say that. It's because of lack of education opportunity and lack of resources, and the government themselves need to prioritize their resources to provide across the board universal education to the extent possible, right? That's one. The other one is there are lack of, the policies are lacking. For example, two types of policies are important in order to enable faster uptake of fourth industrial revolution technology. One is that you need to have enabling policies, such as ICT policy, that requires universal service obligation for the provider of service. For example, fiscal policy that reduces a custom duty or tax on the import of, let's say, computer or a smartphone. Then trade policy, public-private partnership policy, these are enabling policies. But at the same time, you need some mitigating policies to prevent the consumer from being deceived, the competitor to protect the sanctity of competition in the market, to prevent market power from being abused. So the policies such as competition policy, consumer protection policy, cyber crimes and data protection policies, these are mitigating policies. You heard the example of back in 2018, I guess, or 19, it was found out that Cambridge Analytica misused personal data of 87 million Facebook users to serve political interest of one individual. So, these are the kind of things that reduces the trust and confidence of the user in the fourth industrial revolution technology or what have you, right? So therefore, it is important to put in place these policies as well. Now, if you have the policies, can the problem be solved? If you have the skill, can the problem be solved? Where do you get the resources from in order to resolve these challenges, right? So when it comes to resources, do LDCs have enough resources to be able to spend in skill development, policy making, or to build fiber optic cables, or to have the electricity that is capable of powering fourth industrial revolution? They may not. And they may have, even if they have competing priorities, health, education, and other priorities, right? So therefore, it is absolutely critical to mobilize investment, private investment, in order to fill the gap. So when I say private investment, I'm trying to define it broadly. It's not only about the local entrepreneur making investment, but also the private investors from abroad investing in infrastructure building, investing in skill, foreign direct investment, or universities, institutions of higher learning, establishing their presence in LDCs to provide that kind of support, as well as support through impact investment. Now, ESG, environment, social, and governance related impact investment are booming, right? So these investment have already been made in some of the LDCs. I can provide example, actually. In my own country, Nepal, there's a company called Cloud Factory. I'll explain that a little later. And Cloud Factory is the company that I mentioned earlier, is providing the AI services. They have been supported by a venture, an impact investor called Dolma Impact Investment Fund. And similarly, an e-commerce company is also being supported by this investment fund. So the impact investors are also now investing in technology, not only in other social sectors where there are spillover benefits for the society as a whole, gender or environment and other kinds of benefit, but also in technology, so that technological revolution would help the countries to leapfrog, right, with that expectation. Similarly, blended finance is another financing instrument that essentially means that you provide some catalytic resources like the one that is provided by the EIF. Then on the basis of that, there will be private financing that would be blended with the public financing, and then that would help power development in the fourth industrial revolution era. So that's the kind of thing I'm thinking in mind. And then currently we are at a stage of a program where we are moving towards the closure of the phase 2 of the program. There is something being discussed about the potential support, aid for trade support to LDCs. If we were to move in that direction to continue to provide support to LDCs, these are the kind of areas where we should invest in. I mean, we have made limited investment in these areas. I can just give you two examples. One, we are working closely with UNESCAP, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia Pacific, based in Bangkok, actually based in Bangkok, and they have a regional office in New Delhi. We are providing support to them to install paperless trade facilities in 4 Asian countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Timor-Leste, to build their capabilities on paperless trade by using blockchain technology. Another example, in Nepal, we are providing support to the government of Nepal to enhance traceability of tea based on their own request and priority by using blockchain technology. So these are the kind of small scale support that we have been providing to the country based on their need that have been identified by the countries themselves. Tomorrow, if let's say a country such as Zambia comes up with a request of helping them on the dairy value chain by utilizing blockchain technology, we would be open to that idea, right? So these are the things that I just want to share with you, with the expectation that it made some sense. Otherwise, we're happy to provide explanation.
No, it makes very good sense, and your knowledge is very, very valuable, because what you're able to do is to talk in detail about the challenges that the fourth industrial revolution poses. You talked about issues with patents, issues with capabilities inside the countries themselves, and many other things. But then you move on to talk about how those might be addressed in order for countries, least developed countries, not to be negatively impacted by the fourth industrial revolution, but actually to take advantage of it. And then you provide examples of how you're doing that. So it's a very full answer, and it reflects a high degree of knowledge around these things. I've talked to a lot of people about technology and development, and the depth of your knowledge is very, very strong and very, very valuable in thinking about these things. My next question was around e-commerce and information technology-based entrepreneurship. This is a strategy that, or a focus on that is a strategy that many countries have considered. Some have moved forward with it. I'm interested in your views on the extent to which this is appropriate, and how it might contribute to the technology gap between least developed and developed countries.
Thank you for that question, and this is very much relevant, and particularly relevant to the discussion that we are having on technology as well as fourth industrial revolution technology. Some of the technologies are being utilized by e-commerce giants, such as Amazon and Alibaba and what have you, right? So indeed, actually, e-commerce was already growing in the second part of, in the 2010s. But then it has actually started growing even more rapidly because of COVID-19. Particularly those countries that are not particularly accustomed to using e-commerce platform for selling goods or services, or purchasing goods or services, they have also moved in that direction. That's in a way, it's an opportunity that COVID-19 has offered to many countries to join the bandwagon. This offers several advantages to both consumers and firms. For small and medium-sized enterprises of LDCs, this means eliminating intermediaries and connecting directly with consumers. This helps them to significantly reduce costs. So when you are doing this through intermediaries, and sometimes intermediaries probably need to sort of aggregate the total production and be able to ship goods. But then now what's happening is that rather than shipping in containers, now it's the shipment is being done in parcels, right? So this is where LDCs can benefit, and they can significantly reduce their trade costs, and they can be globally competitive, although they continue to face other barriers that they need to overcome, for which we are playing a minor role. And information technology-based entrepreneurship that you mentioned is also growing, not only in emerging countries such as China, India, and the Philippines, but also in LDCs, least developed countries such as Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, Cambodia, Laos, Nepal, and Niger. The last three countries that I mentioned, Laos, Nepal, and Niger, and this is a fact that I want to highlight, they have higher share of ICT exports, information communication technology exports, to overall services export compared to the world average. The world average is 15.6%. In these three countries, the total share of their export of ICT is higher than the global average, which means that they are probably competitive. I mean, that figure alone, without looking at the details of what are the kinds of product they are exporting, and that exercise I will probably do in the future, but not now, you would not be able to understand the real picture, but then it gives a sense that they are probably competitive in these sectors, right? However, the issues that I highlighted earlier in the context of fourth industrial revolution technologies, accessibility, affordability, and application, they are important in the context of e-commerce as well. And this actually, if you look at the digital divide, what is digital divide after all? Is it only about the fact that the 1 in 4 persons in LDCs are connected, they are online, right? This is one measure, but a comprehensive measure would be to look at all these three elements, right? Digital divide is there, but then despite digital divide, some of the entrepreneurs, and particularly the younger ones in LDCs, are taking advantage of the e-commerce boom in the global market. And EIF has supported a numerous projects actually in LDCs aimed at building capability of LDCs to take advantage of e-commerce boom. And if I look at the figure, and this is something off the top of my head, I'm saying that almost 9% of our total phase 2 portfolio is invested on e-commerce or related activities. I'll give you the examples of a few support measures that we have provided to LDCs. First and foremost, we have provided support to 9 countries to conduct their what is known as their e-trade readiness assessment. We are a part of a network called E-Trade for All, created by UNCTAD. And as a part of that network, the contribution that we thought we would be able to provide to LDCs based on the kind of a template being developed by UNCTAD, and which actually follows the Diagnostic Trade Integration Studies template, which was developed by us, is to identify what are the opportunities and what are the challenges, and also to prepare action matrix priorities. And for that, we've supported 3 countries in Africa, 1 in Asia, and 5 in the Pacific to conduct e-trade readiness assessment. We provided resources to UNCTAD. They conducted the assessment on our behalf. And on the basis of that, we provided additional support. Then we've also provided support for the development of e-commerce platform in countries as varied as Cambodia, Nepal, and Senegal. In Cambodia, there's a project called Go for eCam project. So it's a name of a project, shorter version of the project's name, Go for eCam. It's about making Cambodia ready for e-commerce, right? And this project was launched 3 years ago. Actually, the difference of this project compared to other projects that we've supported is that it follows closely known as, it is very close to the ecosystem approach that we have been advocating in a number of occasions. we've advocated for ecosystem approach, because you try to fix one hole, then it creates two other holes somewhere, right? Therefore, you provide support, piecemeal support on policy, don't provide support on a skill, it's of no use. You provide support on both skill and policy, but not on infrastructure, then it's of no use. What we've tried to do, infrastructure is a big thing where we actually, we cannot provide enough resources. We expect the countries to mobilize additional resources, as I mentioned earlier, from the likes of Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, or the World Bank, for that matter. But on other areas, I think the ecosystem approach is super helpful, because in Cambodia, what they've done is to not only provide regulation supports on regulations, but also on innovation and investment. And they have built capacity of micro, small, and medium enterprises to take advantage of opportunity. This is almost a full suite approach, ecosystem approach. And they have partnered with Swiss Contact, an NGO, to develop what is known as a system whereby the custom clearance system is integrated with the postal clearance system. Normally what happens in many LDCs is that you first clear your parcel at the custom, and then you again clear at the post office. So there's a bit of a duplication. They have streamlined the process so that both the entities are now sharing data and information, and once you clear the goods from post office, you don't need to clear from the custom, right? Or vice versa. So that's really a great achievement. But at the same time, they felt that if we do this and remain silent, then how on earth the micro, small, and medium enterprises are going to take advantage of this opportunity? So they developed a full capacity building program, a complete package for micro, small, and medium enterprises to benefit from this opportunity. And then trading in parcel has become super easy now in Cambodia as a result of our support and the support from our partners. Then we've also supported development of e-commerce policies in Cambodia, Rwanda, and Nepal. We've supported capacity building of women entrepreneurs in South Asia. And this is a very interesting example of how we can collaborate with our partners. So UNSCAP office in South Asia and us, we provided them a small catalytic support of $400,000 to build capacity of women entrepreneurs in LDCs in the region. And these are Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal, right? We cannot provide money to build capacity of women entrepreneurs in non-LDCs such as India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Maldives, right? So with our initial cost of helping them to our partner UNSCAP to develop, let's say, the training manual, and then getting the consultant on board and everything. So they did the groundwork through our support. But then when it came to bringing the women entrepreneurs from other LDCs, they mobilized additional resources from Commonwealth Secretariat and other organizations in order to enable participation of others. And initial target for us was to build capacity of 500 women entrepreneurs. Thanks to COVID, everything went online, virtual, and they were able to build capacity of 2,000 plus women. And now the project has ended. One of the spillover benefit of the project, which we had not foreseen in the beginning, of course, they have been able to access global market, but at the same time, we had never foreseen in the beginning is that the women entrepreneurs, when they met in person, they were able to establish connection and B2B connection. Now exporter from women entrepreneurs from Bangladesh, they are exporting to India. From India, they're exporting to Bhutan, Bhutan to Nepal, Bhutan to Sri Lanka. It's happening, right? And this is a great example of the capacity building support. And we've also helped them to create what is known as an e-commerce platform, which is a training platform for women entrepreneurs to be it's a kind of a swimming pool that we've created for them to learn how to upload the picture, how to get noticed, how to advertise, So all of those digital marketing and e-commerce capacity building support combined has actually created significant impact on the ground. So that's another example of how we've supported countries. And finally, we are also working together with ITU, International Telecommunication Union, to deliver skill development support, focusing on women and girls, not only the entrepreneurs, but also workers in Burundi, Ethiopia, and Haiti. So this is another example of how we have been supporting, and there are many other examples, but I would stop here in relation to the examples of our support to e-commerce. There's a lot more that needs to be done, and we acting alone would not be able to meet the growing requirement and demand from LDCs in this space.
Well, you did say there were challenges at the beginning of your answer, but at the same time, you've described some wonderful work that that EIF is supporting and that is taking place in least developed countries that illustrates that e-commerce and technology entrepreneurship have a very important role to play in development today. And, it's wonderful to see the work that's being done. I just have one final question, which is a broad question. You can answer it however you wish, but is there any advice that you'd like to leave the people who are watching this with?
Okay, here I want to focus on 3 points, actually. I don't want to elaborate beyond that, because there are 3 key important takeaways, actually, that I want to share. The first one is that I might have mentioned this already, during our conversation. See, no amount of support provided to LDCs is going to help them trade better if there is limited country ownership. Country ownership is the key. If the country ownership is there, then the country will be willing to mainstream trade in their national development strategy. This is an area where we provided support to countries, and I'm proud to say that out of 51 countries where we are working, 48 countries have mainstream trade in their national development strategy. The advantage of mainstreaming trade is the following. Once the trade is mainstream in the national development strategy, the government is inclined to provide resources for trade development. And when the development partners, they come to the country, the first document they look at is the national development strategy. If it is trade is a priority sector identified in the national development strategy, then the donors will also contribute resources. So that is super important. But even more important than this is the fact that this can ensure sustainability of intervention on the ground. See, what happens is that some of the projects which are parachuted from the headquarters, as I mentioned earlier, of the donor partner, the projects are implemented, effectively implemented, great results achieved. But what happens after the project of funding dries up? Let's say 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you continue to provide support. Then if you don't have a sustainability which is front-loaded at the design of the project, then if you do not identify an institutional host for the project, if we do not have the human resource sustainability, you don't have the financial sustainability, then the project benefits that has accrued to a number of people that actually comes to a halt. So in order to ensure sustainability, also government ownership is super important. And particularly if you are talking about policy changes, some of the policies are changed because the donor resources are there, but then those policies can also be reversed if the sustainability or the guarantee of government ownership is not there. Number one. Number two, partnership is the key, because I've highlighted that fact that EIF alone or the government alone cannot meet the growing requirement of countries, whether in the fourth industrial revolution era or in the e-commerce or any other infrastructure project, right? You have to work with other partners such as the World Bank, such as African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, regional commissions, and other entities. But at the same time, you have to work with the private sector to be able to mobilize resources to meet the growing requirement of the country. The third aspect, which I did not deal with adequately, because I mentioned about challenges, given the heterogeneity of countries, even within LDCs, you have one group of LDCs who are exporting, let's say, manufactured products such as Bangladesh, Cambodia, Nepal. A few countries are exporting manufactured products. Other LDCs are exporting only extractive products or agricultural products, right? And some have comparative advantage on services, such as tourism. Others have comparative advantage on goods, and that too within agriculture sector. So, and then different kind of a political, challenges that these countries are facing. For example, we had to close down our project in Yemen. We had to close down our project in Afghanistan. We had to shut down our operation in Myanmar. But we continue to face challenges in a few other countries as well in Africa, right? So given the heterogeneity of LDCs in terms of their structure of export, in terms of their political environment, in terms of their the natural calamities and disaster they face. Despite that, we have been able to provide effective and targeted support to LDCs because our supports are custom made and custom tailored and designed by countries themselves. So therefore, the element of sustainability that I described earlier is also there, but at the same time, we have been able to deliver significant results. But we have also failed in some countries. The real issue is that, you have to learn not only from success, and you have to share success stories, and that we've done, Cambodia, Laos, PDR, Rwanda, Senegal, and few other countries, Vanuatu, have done extremely well. And then we share those examples with other countries so that other countries could also learn from them. But you have to learn from mistakes. You have to learn from failure, right? So that the kind of support that measures that you provide to countries once you have failed in your operation by following a particular route, now you change it based on the discussion with countries and then try to deliver the program better and more effectively, then you would probably succeed, right? The chances of succeeding is higher when you learn from a failure rather than completely abandoning the project because you have failed, right? So that's also important. And this is even more so in the context of the fact that LDCs differ in many respects.
Very helpful. And I'm really grateful to you, Ratnakar, for this interview. I found it fascinating. I know the people who are watching it or who have watched it will find it very, very valuable. Many of them at the beginning of their career, and hopefully some will be contributing to development and to improvements in least developed countries. So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you very much for providing this opportunity. Happy to provide additional ideas, inputs, or thoughts if they are going to be helpful for your students or those who are watching. Yes, do let me know and do keep in touch. Thank you so much.